you and I have known each other for a little while. You are a SmartBody SmartMind student. You're a SPT level 1 mentee. You're in my practitioner track training right now. You and I have done 2 long form interviews. So some people might recognize you, and we were trying to discern when you originally started SBSM. Did we ever figure that out?
I started SBSM. It was so funny. Google Memories, like, and photos showed me the workshop that I was at on February 1st, when I first was introduced to polyvagal theory, and the instructor showed a video of yours. And then I Googled you, and then SmartBody SmartMind was starting, and I was like, oh, this was a missing piece. So it was 5 years ago.
Okay.
It was February 2020.
Wow. All right, cool. So we have a longer form interview because we're not going to go into your backstory, but Rachel's history is phenomenal. Please, anyone who wants to know a story of healing from some pretty serious stuff, cancer, surgery, addiction, all these things, it is in these 2 videos. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll link those below because we'll put this up on YouTube. If you're here on Instagram, if you just look up Rachel and my name, Irene Lyon, you will find them. And if you can't find them, just email us and we'll help you find them. So you did some great stories a day or 2 ago, and it made me kind of beam up with a little bit of like cool pride. That's awesome, because you are someone who's come over really this hump of like, is this even working? Am I doing anything? It's so, the things are so small, so slow. I don't think anything's working. Is it working? And then it works. And then, little setbacks happen, and then we come through. And you have said these great stories about the importance of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I hear from my students, your peers, and even future students is, how is this different? Like, I've done all these online courses. I've done lots of somatic practice exercises. I worked with somatic practitioners. Some of the people come into our work really experienced, and even practitioners themselves. So would you mind talking about your experience, like going into, we're going to be very SmartBody SmartMind centric on this talk, just so people can understand. But what was your experience going in, if you can remember, and what you just found different, Rachel?
So my experience going into SmartBody SmartMind is that it was like, why am I doing these little things? But I did them because I had so much belief, like, in the work. Like, there was not even that I had something to look at that made me believe in it. I just felt it. I just felt it, like, oh, this is a missing piece. And it echoed things from the past where people had tried to get me to, like, slow down and pay attention to how your foot's moving across the floor, and things where I was like, I was too functionally frozen to get it.
Yeah.
And I had been like hit by a Mack truck of life, and I was in a place where I was just open to it. And so it really, at that time when I was introduced to SBSM, I dug it. It worked. I was starting to relax. I was starting to feel things. I noticed shifts. And then I had another big thing happen, and I lost it, and I disconnected from the work a little bit, and then trying to get back into it, it was like, okay, well, but I know this stuff, and I've done this before, and it was kind of like boring, but there was still trust. And the more that I've done it, and especially now being an SPT and being with more people who are doing the basics and having that like mirrored back to me, it's like, oh, okay, I'm seeing so much more. It's just, I get the image of like water over really dry, brittle ground, and it takes a little while to sink in, but it's seeping in. But the water has to like stay there. So I have to keep engaging with these things. And then like what I experienced in that pod with Seth was like all all of that prep work and all of that repetition, seeing it in play, experiencing it for myself, and then having something like finally like sprout up and open. And it was like, I mean, it shifted everything for me. Not in some like, oh my gosh, my life is now suddenly like super easy, but I get people going like, oh, like, there's something different about you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? Did you get a haircut? Like, no. No, I did this really cool piece of work.
Well, and what I want to do, because there might be some people new here, so I'm going to do some context just so folks understand what SBSM, SPT, and pods mean. But what I will say first is if people do go back and watch our first interview, and even the second one, I mean, your presence and your vitality and your health and your connection and regulation is like 1,000,000% increase. Like, and I know you know that. But it would be really, I think, a fascinating thought experiment and a little extra piece of homework for people to go and just check that out. Because sometimes a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000,000 words. But just so everyone knows, SmartBody SmartMind, it stands for, or SBSM is SmartBody SmartMind. This is my 12-week curriculum that I've been running for many years. We're about to go into our 17th live session. And at the end of February, so registration begins at the end of Feb. We start early March. And as a SmartBody SmartMind member, and as you know this, because this is very confusing to some people, they think, why do people have to go back and redo it? I don't get it, right? And does a person have to pay each time? No, you do not. Once you pay your tuition, whether it's the first time you like the full pay or the 12, you're an alumni and you can come back and be in the material, ask questions, attend the calls. It's all there. Get any upgrades. So that's SBSM. SPT stands for Scientuitive Practitioner Track. So Scientuitive is really my company name. It's my ethos. It's the connection of science and intuition, biology, soul source, just that magic that we have that I think for many of you and your peers, you feel that when you start to get into these layers that are so subtle and so biological, but they're not about forcing you to like do something so specific that it's confusing, but but the things are so subtle that sometimes someone goes, how is this ever going to heal my nervous system? But but it does with consistency. And then the final thing you mentioned were the pods. And this is just a fancy word for group work. And so in our current practitioner training, you and your peers are in small groups, pods, with my husband and colleague Seth, and he is doing over the course of maybe 90 minutes, 15 minutes of work with each person. And some might say, what will 15 minutes of work do? But the beauty is that you are all so well steeped in the basics and the foundations that 15 minutes of work is actually a lot of work.
I can't imagine it having been more. Like more could have been too much.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Just
well, because I've had bigger movements of energy that felt good and felt like I was moving something, but it's like a rubber band, like stretched too far out and then it snaps back and it hurts. And there's the system has to adjust and integrate, right? And so like with this little bit of work, it's like eating a little bit of really delicious dessert and it doesn't give you a stomach ache. It doesn't, upset the balance. It's just good and nourishing. And I've experienced some little things of integration stuff, but it's not like, oh, I just binged on that entire cheesecake and now my gut's like,
Yeah, I'm laughing because we just had cheesecake at the house and it was like this joke, like, because it was this huge cheesecake and it was going between the refrigerator at the top of the house and the bottom. We have 2 fridges because some people are staying here. And everyone's like, where's the cheesecake? And we just like, we're eating it little by little over the course of a week. So I know exactly what you mean.
Perfect analogy. There's no accident.
No. The other thing you said, so this is going to bring people a little bit into more of the practitioner work, but I know that you had mentioned one of your stories, and I want to share this in service of those who might be interested in, going through SBSM and maybe doing practitioner training with me. Can you speak to how like subtle and basic our first sort of 5 months were? And like be really honest, like what did you think of that? And what do you see now?
So I have my my notes, like
Awesome.
my notebook from SBT in front of me, and like, you know, it's those 5 things that you introduce. Like, we're going to be focusing on these 5 things: orienting, resourcing, potent posture, breath, and following your impulse, which were all things that were the foundation was laid in SmartBody SmartMind. And I was like, wait, but we're gonna be practitioners. Like, aren't we gonna do more? But in that first intensive at Brew Creek that we had, it's like, okay, we're focusing on those 5 things and experiencing them in these like different ways through the interactions that we had, and that practice then, like, and keeping the focus on that, I was bringing it more into my everyday, like when I'm having sessions with clients. And it's that water seeping in analogy again, seeing all the different ways it can be applied and really allowing it to like come into like a part of me more. And I thought like, oh gosh, that's it, but there's actually so much in it.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that now, especially I think having a break. We were on break for December and a little most of January, right? And then like coming back to it now, it's like it's more, I feel like it's more in all of us. And so then going into that pod work, going into that session allowed more to come out because there's more capacity, there's more skill of that. And I'm also seeing it in my work with my clients that like my shifts are opening more for them, even if they don't know this work. And it's all because of the repetition of those basics, which I'm a person who can be like, that's fucking boring. Like, I don't want to do the same thing again and again.
I don't want to do this.
I want novelty.
Yeah. Well, if I'm really honest, it was a risk for me too, because I had an inherent, like, again, back to that Scientuitive, like intuitive hit. Yes, there's all these things from the SBSM. Hi, puppy.
The cat came in.
The SPT or the SBSM curriculum has a lot of content, a lot of deep information into so many topics that I have learned through my work and training with somatic experiencing, and Kathy Kane's work, Steve Terrell's work, master classes with Peter Levine, and you guys get a lot. And, to just focus on 5 things and that be the 5 things for nearly 10 months of training. But what it does is it creates a constraint.
Right.
And we've been working with these constraints, and there's something about having a constraint, not in a negative way, but it forces you to, there's a concept in thinking theory, lateral thinking. When you have a certain constraint, you're forced to see different options, different ways of seeing things, creating things. Like, how many different ways can you make food with 3 ingredients? Like, these are your only ingredients, right? So it was a big risk for me, if I'm really honest. But what I've seen is that the terrain that all of you, and also the all SBSM members, for example, they're building this solid, robust terrain and foundation so that when the bigger boulders of trauma and survival stress start to come out, the terrain, your system, your nervous system actually can handle those things. Could you speak to that in your own experience? Like, things, just, I'll let you free flow with that.
Mm, yeah, just I'm noticing in my life right now situations that have come up that I don't think I would have noticed as triggering sort of old things in me, and I'm just more present and I can see it and I can notice the reactions and that stored survival stress, that oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, I need to go, and I can feel it and channel it in a different way. I can take care of it in a different way. I don't have to blow up my life or cause harm to myself by stuffing it away. And it just I can be with life more, and then process it in a way, like set it aside, like I had to do with that thing that happened at work that I don't want to talk in detail about, but I think that's what led me to processing what I did in the pod. And it's because I had those basics on board. And so when the thing was happening, even if I couldn't, like, because I really couldn't do anything, or I didn't feel I could do anything about it at the moment, I could feel all the things that were moving through me,
Yeah.
be in touch with it, and feel my feet on the ground and notice my breath and all those things.
Exactly. And I think one of the key things about the basics that are, say, taught, orienting, resourcing, potent posture, following breath, following impulse, is that they look great on paper, but they seem really simple. And yet we want to get to a point where all those 5 things are occurring at the same time in our system. And that, as I've experienced, and many of my students, yourself, your peers have said, wow, it does take a long time to master those all at the same time, where you're not thinking about them, they're just occurring. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I still have to think about them sometimes, a lot of times, like in the moment when the stress came up, but I'm glad I had the space to think about them.
Yeah.
Because in the past, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And that change just, I don't know, it happens. And then it's like one day I feel like you wake up and you're like, oh, I've become like a part of me now.
One of the things, Rachel, often people ask us, so I'm going to just pose a question to you from your experience. I'd love to hear. And I think we're getting this question more because more people are aware. You okay?
Yeah, something popped over here. I think it was my water bottle.
Oh, funny.
Defensive orienting.
All good. All good. I think I'd love to pose this thought to you and then get your opinion, your experience. I think, like, because more people are knowledgeable about what trauma is and the nervous system, and that there's stuff stored inside, because that there's this fear, and it's a legit fear of, I don't want to start this work because of what might come up and out. Was that ever anything that you had in your awareness, or was there a worry around that, or were you not aware of the stored stuff when you got into this work? And it's sometimes hard to remember. I know for myself, when I started learning more somatic experiencing principles, it wasn't because I was looking to heal my trauma, it's because I was trying to help my clients in my Feldenkrais practice. And then it was through that, as I've talked about in longer interviews, that I went, oh man, there's a lot in my system. But now that story and that concept has been shared with so many people, I think there's almost this worry of, like, I don't know if I want to go down this rabbit hole because I don't know what I might find, and I need to, like, be functional. I'm a mom, I have a job, I need to do all these things. Do you remember your experience with that at all, if at all?
Yeah, I realized that for me, my cancer experience, and again, people can go back and watch those older interviews, was stored shit in my system. It was a result of that dysregulation. And so I did not want to have it have to come up and out in that way. I wanted to learn the terrain. I wanted to have I guess, a sense of relationship to it, and I guess kind of control almost, you know, like so that I knew what was going on and I didn't have to encounter something like that again. And so like something happened to me. I had a really big release in a Kundalini yoga class. I had no idea what was happening. I didn't have the capacity to hold that release. And so I think it's actually for me an argument to get into this work and start now before something like that comes up, because it's like I think of it like opening I love Topo Chico. I love bubbly water, right? But when you open it, it's all pressurized and it wants to like, so if the system gets like a little poke and like it's gonna come out, like you want to know how to titrate it. You want to know what's happening and how to open the bottle and build the capacity to hold that. And that's what SmartBody SmartMind and these 5 principles that we work with, I think, really give us the tools to do and know our resources and know, like, have a map for what's going on. And so with that, and getting to know our capacity and sense our edges, we can kind of like maybe, I don't know, mitigate those bigger things come up. And then when things do come up, know what's happening instead of like freaking out about it. And cause you know, my mind will go to the worst case scenario. Oh my God, I'm dying.
Of course. And that's, you know, when someone's had a medical scare, it's kind of legit, it's a legit worry. Like, oh, what is this? But, you know, for those, again, new here, this whole, you know, just a little bit of theory, when our nervous system is dysregulated, specifically this autonomic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze, shutdown, when it is on all the time in whatever state it chooses to be on and in, and that's very individual to each person and our past life experiences. Through the research, through the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences study, we know that if we don't work on this dysregulation, chances are we will get sick. And for you, it was cancer. For others, it might be a chronic illness. It might be autoimmune. It might be a neurodegenerative condition like ALS, MS. Could be some form of what we would consider psychiatric diagnosis. All the way to, you know, social anxiety, insomnia, chronic pain. I mean, the list is long. And we pretty know, I don't want to say it's conclusive, but like it is, in talking to enough of you and your peers, it's like, yep, everyone's like, I was dysregulated. This is why this happened.
And can I say something? And I don't want to scare anyone, but it didn't start like, oh my gosh, I just got a cancer diagnosis. I had signs of mystery illness. Oh, you have IBS. Oh, you have this. Oh, you're just having a bad reaction to your IUD. You know, like all these things. I was in a car accident, and that was kind of like tripped the wire to like start bringing this stuff out, and had all kinds of mystery pains, and they couldn't figure out why, but your blood work's fine, you know. So it builds over time too. So I think the sooner you can address things, like don't wait till it gets really bad.
Take it from you. Learn from us. Because yeah, I had no idea, as you know, no clue what was stored in my system.
Right. And I think I said this, I don't know if it was on a training call or something, but I am still surprised at how much is probably still in there lurking. And there was something else I wanted to say about the constraints, because we work a lot in our groups. We do these breakout rooms with a prompt, and it's you've encouraged us to stick to the prompt. And it's another one of those things that's like, okay, all right, this is just too simple. Like, what are we going to get out of this? But inevitably, there's so much richness, and what comes up in it might be just a little thing and a little movement of energy, and it shifts how I am, and it changes things. And so it's kind of like just opening up that soda bottle a little bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the patience and the trust that you guys all have with what I present to you is wonderful, because it's like, trust me, just try this, just try this. So that also comes back to Smart Body, Smart Mind. We've done this enough times to know that, again, we can't say with this certainty this will work for everyone. But what we have found is that if someone, as you said at the very beginning of our talk, you had the belief in yourself, and for whatever reason you felt a connection to my material and this work, it shifted and things came through. I have like literally a question that's written verbatim, so I'm going to ask it to you. This is a common thing that we hear, and right now in our online space where there's so many online courses, I get this. So someone would say, I'm worried I'm just going to drop out like I do all my other online courses. So people really are fearful because they've seen how they've started things and then they've just dropped off. What's your experience with that? And you're also a counselor, you work with people in addiction, so you've seen firsthand people start things and drop off. What's your wisdom around that, Rachel?
It's a real pattern in myself. And so with my first round of Smart Body, Smart Mind, I was kind of fortunate to do it during 2020.
Right.
And so I ended up having the space, and I was really like, it's one of the first courses and commitments I made that I saw through. And then I've dipped my toes in and out in other iterations of it. But keep coming back. It's something that we say in recovery, like keep coming back. And just do what you can, and know that you have a whole lifetime access to this as long as Irene's got it out there. So,
yeah.
It's okay, but also believe that like you can do it. Like, rewrite that story that you always quit everything. That's one I had. My mom literally would tell me, like, I'm not going to pay for you to do these lessons because you'll just quit. So I had it like deep in me.
That's a pretty strong wired pattern there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you broke that pattern.
Yeah, me too.
Good.
Me too. And also, I think that in Smart Body, Smart Mind, the fact that there's a good community and you're so present, and there are so many calls per week, and there's questions, and you can go back to things. For me, and I'm experiencing this with SPT too, like just having that container, there's a real sense of holding that I haven't necessarily experienced in other online courses. And I think that comes from the way you have it structured, obviously being informed by all your work, and then your regulation in your system.
Thank you. And it's just not me too. Like right now we've got Seth doing calls. We have 3 of our moderators, Jen, Mara, and Rebecca, are in there doing Q&A calls. And then we have 9 moderators who moderate the forums, right? And there's a forum with each lesson. So if you have a question about orienting, you can ask a question under there. If you have a question about some of the Feldenkraistian work, you ask questions under those things. If you have a question about a theory piece, it's all contained in a very structured way. And so that's the other thing everyone hears. There's definitely so many places to study and ask your question. And I think that would be one of the highlights, or not highlights, but unique elements, is, to me, it's about learning. And when you learn, you see new things, and that's what creates the therapeutic effect, right?
Yeah, you said something earlier about how are these things going to like fix me or heal me, and it's like, well, they're not. not necessarily, but they're going to create like the fertile soil that will shift something.
Yeah.
And that is like all that learning and sort of working at the edges. I think when we're trying to heal, we want to just go into that thing and like get it out and get it done. But it works a lot better to learn, to know, to have a little experience, and to like creating an invitation for the healing rather than going, you better heal right now.
Yeah, and this is actually a good follow-up to a question. So someone, the handle is Charity Just Us. My one wonder before we get into this question, have you, Charity Just Us handle, done any of my online courses? Or are you brand new here? Because I want to know context. So that's just a sort of side question. And so I'll read out the question. They say, when starting this work, can things get truly worse before they get better? I'm finding that I've become more clumsy, have more aches and pains, a weaker immune system, and I'm lashing out more. So, you know, I like to rephrase that sometimes, because what does getting worse mean? The reason why is because in our culture, at least in Western culture, I'll be very, very kind of macro, we see symptoms as bad, or we've been taught that symptoms are bad, right? We've even been taught that a fever is bad when it's the most intelligent thing that our body can do to get well, right? And so part of this work is, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but working on the basics and the foundations so that when you do have a sensation, a symptom, a pain, there's more understanding and more foundation to be with that intense thing. And so they say, yeah, I'm a 21-day student and have listened to nearly every single one of your videos. Great. So the first thing I'm going to say is keep doing the lessons over and over and over again, whether you're titrating them and just doing 5 minutes a day or the whole lesson, just little bits at a time. So yeah, but yes, if we are living in a really deep survival state and we have suppressed so much fight, flight energy, there can be a lot of pain that comes up in the form of tension because it's old patterns coming up. I've experienced this myself. To this day, I still have old survival patterns that are very old coming up. Just a couple nights ago, I couldn't sleep very well because I was experiencing something that was very early and very terror-based, right? So my heart was just out of control for no reason, but it was like that. Last night, I had a deep, amazing sleep and I feel great. So is that getting worse? To me, it's not getting worse. It's actually the system finding its medicine through getting this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, what's your experience and what's some advice and wisdom for this person who's in the 21-day right now?
Yeah, I like that reframing, Irene, that, we have this way of looking at sensations as being bad when it's really just the body doing what the body needs to do. And, I guess a question I would ask, you're doing the 21 days and you're listening to all the videos and maybe it is a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could titrate it a little more, meaning, if you're listening every day or doing a thing every day, maybe you take a break and you just take a bubble bath that one night, and looking at other ways to resource to help support the system, like through circadian biology or red light therapy or a sauna, or maybe that could even be too much, or really gentle supportive body work with someone who's well attuned. And are you focusing all on trying to heal your trauma? Do you have a good social life and a good social support system? Looking at those things to help sort of bring some soothing and connection.
Good advice.
That's not body focused.
And
for me, I've experienced, because I was really functionally frozen, I've experienced anxiety. I never had anxiety that I can remember, so it's like But I know because of the education, like, okay, like this is my system, you know what my system needs to do. It's not going to be this way forever.
Oh,
And I have the tools to be with it.
thanks, Rachel. And what you really spoke to there with food and circadian biology and body work, getting outside, watching a funny movie, that kind of thing. Those all come down to like I call it the first stage of neuroplastic healing sequencing. So you've got all your trauma, nervous system stuff, but you still need to make sure that your house is clean, that your space is organized, that you're eating good stuff, drinking good water, getting sunlight, being active, even if it's just a little bit, depending on your level of capacity. So all these things are in service of regulation. One question here from Johnny E. Walker. So you say, and I agree with what you're saying here, there's so much information about nervous system regulation. Yes, there is. Too much that it becomes difficult on where to start. So I'll start with this first part of your question. You're right. And I'm partially to blame for that because in 2011, I put this stuff online and created a course. It was the first course on the nervous system online. I can verify that. I know that's true. And nobody was talking about it. And so now everyone's talking about it, which is super good. I think it's really important. But with anything new, and we have to realize how new this work is, comes an onslaught of everyone and their dog wanting to provide this information out there. And what I can say is, and I'd love to get your take on this, Rachel, as you become more discerning, I have no doubt about what you listen to, is you got to try to listen to your gut and what feels accurate for you. I also understand that might be tough when one is still living in dysregulation, but always look at people's credentials. Unfortunately now, a lot of people have credentials who put out nervous system information, but they actually are not practiced. And it's very hard to know if they've actually done the full training because there's no governing body that governs us. So really, I just watched the series 1883, Taylor Sheridan's backstory from Yellowstone, which is like an American show. My God, when you watch 1883 and it's like the Wild West in America, it's crazy. There are no rules, there are no laws. You can shoot anybody you want, and it's scary. And in some ways, currently right now, the somatic nervous system healing worlds is a Wild West because there's no sanctioned governing body like with, say, medical school or legal, law school. So that's the first thing I'll say. And you asked, what do you recommend? For you right now, SBSM is beyond your price range. That's totally fine, but you can start the 21-day course. You can start the 21 days. I really recommend it because you have enough information in that course to last you a year, if not two. And then the other thing is when you do the 21 days, that tuition is taken off of SmartBody SmartMind when and if you should do SBSM in the future. But Rachel, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stuff that's out there. And I am so proud of all of you guys in SPT because you are sending out accurate information, and it's like so amazing to see you guys just peppering and sprinkling accurate information out there. So thank you for doing that. But what do you have to say about this piece that this person asks?
Yeah, it is the Wild West out there. And I mean, sometimes I look at things and I'll get a little confused, like, wait, this person's saying that, and they're an SCP, they're a somatic experiencing practitioner, and they're trained, but that doesn't really jive with what I've learned through Irene. So, we're always coming back and asking you questions and, trying to figure it out. So, going with your gut, if you can get in touch with that, like I just felt a connection with Irene, and I felt called to it, and I could feel that. Maybe you can't, like you said, Irene, like some people might be still figuring that out. But beware of anyone who offers a quick fix or tells you just do these exercises in this sequence and you will be healed. And all you need is 12 weeks, or you can reset, or you can rewire. Oh, and they're just giving you exercises without education. That would be another red flag for me. For sure. And then I would say if you can't afford SmartBody SmartMind, start with the 21-day tune-up and follow all of Irene's Scientuitive practitioner track, people, because we're learning from her, and we're going to be having offerings and our teachings, and it's really good to hear it from other people. You know that we're being mentored by Irene, so we're getting, in my opinion, what is like the best nervous system education and practice out there. And we're going to have our own ways of describing things and explaining it and our own analogies. And one of our stories might resonate more with you. And so, you know, soak up the information from all the resources available.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I want to reiterate what you said. If anybody says that they can fix your trauma in 60 seconds, go the other way. And even if that's their way of pitching to get you onto their email list and they know that that's not possible, in my opinion, that's pretty sleazy.
It's icky. It's so icky.
Because it's praying, you know, pray with an E, it's praying with to those who don't really understand. And again, we're in this situation where most people don't really understand how complex this stuff is. And that's why there is all this information that's confusing, because you don't get it all in one spot. And I think that's the other element, is I've got my information from many different sources, all high level. And then I go back and reiterate and ask again, is this still accurate? Is this still accurate? I consult with my elder colleagues, you know, who are really good in one area or are really good in this area. And we want to be careful with those who are kind of portraying themselves as, I find, gurus, you know, and that's, you know, I have like, go follow Rachel, go follow other people, use their stuff, learn from them, because it's not going to work if just one person is like the king of the castle with this work, right? That's the only way we'll create a real profession, is everyone is doing it. Everyone has the right theory, but how they put it out there is going to be just a little different, because you're all unique in your systems. No more questions, it looks like. So I think we've covered a lot.
Can I add something about SBSM? So, you know, we started talking about how it just like, it can seem so basic. And there's this quote that's been in my head. I did a live on it last night, but no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man. And SBSM at first can feel like a really shallow river, I guess. Like, oh my gosh, it's so boring. You know, there's not, you know, a lot there. I'm just gonna lay here and like inhale and exhale and like hold my joints
touch my wrist. Yeah, and this is stuff that thanks for the honesty.
But, and you were speaking of this earlier, there's so much there, there's so much support. And then also, as I go back and look at these things and do these practices, it's like, wow, this river is really, really deep. There's so much there. And so if you join and you only do the first 2 modules, but then you come back to it and you do a little more, like the river gets deeper, and it's worth it. It's so worth it, I think.
That's a great visual. Thanks for that. Someone asked what to do after the 21-day nervous system tune-up. SmartBody SmartMind, that's the next step. That would be the best step to take, and we'll be doing that again at end of February this month.
And also, if I'm going to put in a plug, if you can't do the SBSM, or it's not, you know, accessible to you, there's the drop-in classes too.
I always forget about those. I haven't been doing them regularly, but yes, there's a whole library of classes.
Right, you can purchase them, right? The replays.
Yeah, they're $19 for an hour-long class. Super, super great way to do a little bit of practice, and there's always theory in there. So all that's on my site. Of course, now I want to answer the question that just came in, the junkie for questions. So specific question from Frau Wombat, good name, is building up capacity the same as widening your window of tolerance? Yes. And it takes, from my experience, a lot of capacity building to start to create a window. And as you build what's called, we would call it a real window of tolerance. This was coined by Dan Siegel. We're also starting to get rid of what's called a false window of tolerance. So many of us who work in the world, who live in the world with coping strategies, management strategies, functional freeze, high levels of dysregulation, we actually don't have a real window of tolerance. We have a false one that allows us to function in the world. But our actual window of tolerance, as my mentor Kathy Kane might say, is just a line. There's no, there's no opening. So as we build that terrain that Rachel and I have been talking about with the basics, one starts to see their actual window of tolerance, which is humbling often to see that. And then sometimes, I'm going to go a little deeper into this question to add some nuance, we still might have to fall back to our false window of tolerance to function. And that's okay. And that's especially okay for those of you who have children. You have to feed your kids. When they're hurt, you need to take care of them. And you have to, like, that's your job, right? And so you might need to fall back into a false window of tolerance and override, stuff down some of the things that you might want to feel or express or whatever, to work with them. And then you have to then go back to your real window of tolerance. And then that's where you do the work and you slow things down. Do you have anything to add to that, Rachel?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, sometimes you're gonna have to go back. I mean, and it took me quite a while, I think, to build some real capacity. Yeah. And though I have more now, working in a helping field, I have to suppress, I have to set it aside, and I can be hard on myself for that. Or having to resource in a way that I wish I didn't. And dogs here. Yeah. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And knowing that we're doing it, having the awareness, and then returning to continue working on building that capacity.
Thank you. Yeah, question, are you familiar with Steve Hoskinson's organic intelligence and how does it compare to SBSM? So Steve actually trained me. So he was my SE trainer when I did my SE training. He was on faculty. He is now doing his own thing. I have not experienced his OI work. So I'm not sure if he has online courses for, I hate the word layman people, but normal people who aren't therapists or wanting to be practitioners. So you'd have to ask. Steve and I are not in contact constantly, but we both still appreciate and respect. And I did get a message from him a little while ago saying, keep up the good work and keep calling out the Wild Westers, so to speak, because he's concerned about what he's seeing. In terms of comparison, I can't compare because I don't know if he has a course for the public. But what I can tell you is one of the big differences between SBSM and, say, other somatic experiencing based models, because really Peter was the one that put the model out in terms of working with survival stress from a titrated way with the body, with the environment, all the things we won't get into now. But one of the unique pieces is the Feldenkraisian component that I bring in. So I'm also a Feldenkrais practitioner. And what I'm starting to find more and more is that the glue that has allowed me to teach SE in an audio format and also early trauma work is because of the Feldenkrais work. And so that would be another thing that is quite unique about SBSM that I haven't seen in other courses. Someone asks, how does false and real window of tolerance work in relation to working with anger? We need to suppress to not lash out, for example, and then work on it on our own. Yeah, anger is a very important topic. We spend a lot of time on anger in SmartBody SmartMind. We don't get into that in the 21 days because you need more time. But what I will say is we need to build up our healthy aggression because that's our life force energy, that's our vitality. And if we've been living in a really dampened, functional freeze or shut down, collapsed state where our capacity is not big. We don't have good nuance of our organs and our breath and our diaphragms. We want to work up to it really small and slow so that our system doesn't get too much intensity all at once. So this old way of like getting anger out and being cathartic and screaming and hitting baseball bats against, you know, pillows and that, while nice in theory, it can actually put the system into more of a false window of tolerance. So yeah, anger is one of the more special topics, I think, and such an important topic. And we don't realize as humans how disconnected we are from real healthy aggression. But when it comes on, it's medicine. I often say anger is medicine. Right, Rachel?
Totally. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to get too much into anger because, you know, then we have to talk about all the building capacity pieces, but it is definitely something we work with, and our students, Rachel would be in one of these people. When you find that first organic anger impulse that comes out, it's like having your first kiss. It's like, whoa, that was really special, because you don't feel exhausted afterwards and you feel better. What kind of practitioner do you suggest we look for if we need more one-on-one help? I actually did a video on this. So if you go to How to Find a Good Practitioner and my name, watch that. It's all there. The key, and it's in my video, but I'll say it now for those who won't go and watch that video. You want to make sure you're working with someone who's still doing their own work. That, you know, and one might say, well, what if they don't tell you? Then probably not a good thing. You know, to have someone who says, I'm enlightened and I'm perfect, not that they would say it those words, but you want to know that someone has done a lot of work, is pretty regulated, and continues to seek healing for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any follow-up on that, Rachel?
I just so wholeheartedly agree with that they're continuing to do their own work. And like, it might be hard with a therapist, but maybe not, because a lot of people also have online presences. Look at who their peers are. Look at who if when they speak, they say like, I learned this from my mentor, Irene, or as you do, and you talk about like, I studied with Kathy Kane, and you know, you acknowledge those people, and it's not just like the Irene show. So like, you know that they have like a lineage, and then, you know, a lot of people will, you know, do lives and like on Instagram or offer workshops with people, and kind of see that they have people that reflect to them, and what are those people like, just to get a feel.
Yeah. I find that it's important that you see a person can really speak the work and can be diverse in what they're talking about. And if, again, because this is social media, so many of you are looking at social media to find people, and this is just my preference, so, you know, I could be wrong in this, but if someone only portrays shiny clips that are perfect with like quick fix techniques, and you don't see any long form education, and by long form, I mean like they can speak for 60 minutes, 90 minutes nonstop and answer questions, like kind of like being in a debate platform, right? Where they're being grilled with things that they don't know what's going to come at them, and they can speak intelligently and with nuance. That, in my opinion, that's what you want to see. But if someone isn't doing that kind of stuff, one might say that there's maybe a bit of a red flag there. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay, last one I'll answer, and then we'll call it for a day for about an hour. We're going to make this 30 minutes. It's an hour now. Yeah. Time has worked. It's all good. Someone asked, how do you know, and I'm kind of reframing the question because I've lost it. How do you know if you've re-traumatized yourself and done too much? That's a great question. And I think what happens as you get more knowledge and you build more capacity, you will know if you've re-traumatized yourself. But if you don't know yet, I'll go back to education. So if our autonomic nervous system is healthy and regulated, our immune system is good, our digestion is good, our circulation is good. We want to connect with the world. We want to take care of ourselves. We can think clearly, all these things. If we've re-traumatized ourselves and put ourselves into a smaller capacity because we've done too much, let's say, these things all start to break down. So your gut might go off, and by go off, I don't mean like there might be a little bit of a blip because the system is finding a new balance, because that can happen too, right? You might do a piece of work and you have like a bit of diarrhea or constipation for a couple days, but then it bounces back and it's better. So that's a good sign that you actually did enough work and you were able to kind of recalibrate. Sleep might go off, but then it returns. So that's what you have to monitor. There isn't one thing, and each person typically has more of a susceptibility to different systems, and this does come down to our genetics, being more sensitive, right? For example, so for me, I know things are off if I get, my skin reacts quite badly to things. My husband, it's his gut. For you, Rachel, how do you know if you've done a bit too much? Is there something that cues to you, ooh, that was too much?
And I was going to ask you this because I think for me, it'll go to like more numbness, like I can't sense as
Got
much.
it.
Like I close back up, I get tension, I have muscle pain, I'm a little lower energy. But I've also had it where I've had gut stuff
Yeah.
come like, whoa, last a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's everyone's going to be different in how they assess if they've done too much. And it really is, guys, it comes back to trial and error. And I always say go a little less, and then test it. And then it's okay to push. It's like if you're training to be more active, you know, to do something physical, you want to be able to titrate up. You're not going to go run that marathon on the first week of training, you know, and you're going to go a little bit more, a little bit less. It's like, oh, today I'm going to try an extra 10 minutes of running, or maybe I'm going to go up a hill and down a hill. And if the next day you feel really good, it's like, that extra 10 minutes, my system could handle that. But if you do that extra 10 minutes and then you can't walk for a week, then you've done too much. Everyone, thank you for being here. Again, if we pop this up on YouTube, thanks for listening on YouTube. And drop a comment or question if you have a follow-up or you just want to say hello. Follow Rachel. We'll make sure we tag you. And we'll see you tomorrow for class.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Irene. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.